Hey guys, so yesterday, The Rock showed up on Pat McAfee's show. Um, I got a video out, but not until after it happened, and I did kind of put in the description of some of the things he said. But the points that but not he, but the points I want to get to that he talked about was the fact that when he showed up at Elimination Chamber, because this is basically where the whole thing with John Cena turning heel and all that came to be. When he showed up at Elimination Chamber, he basically said it was due to Ari Emanuel calling him up because tickets weren't selling, even though they had sold 40,000 tickets. Yeah, 40K, in tickets for the Rogers Center, formerly the Sky Dome. So I guess Ari Emanuel wanted more or something like that. I don't know. To me, I think Ari Emanuel, with all due respect, he still has a lot to learn about the ins and the outs of the wrestling business, and that sometimes 40K is good enough, and you don't need to call upon anybody else to try to really, fill up the stadium and everything like you want to. It's not a WrestleMania; it's a PLE prelude to WrestleMania. But with that said, he mentioned that was one of the reasons that he showed up at Elimination Chamber. Now, he has gone on record and said that this whole thing started back at Bad Blood. And that is true. He did that. It kind of did, have the hints thrown in there at the end of Bad Blood in October. But, we didn't know what he was going to do next. And then we get to the Raw Netflix premiere. He's there not as The Rock, not as the final boss, but as Dwayne Johnson, member of the TKO board. He's friendly with everybody. He's friendly with, Cody Rhodes, complimenting him. The very guy he's in a storyline feud with, and da-da-da. So it just threw a lot of people off, like, what's going on here? And then the following night on NXT, he decides to go back into being the final boss character, kind of shoot, if you will, on the, what is it, the IWC, the critics, the podcasters and all that, and tell them, hey, just enjoy, know your role, shut your effing mouth, and enjoy the ride The Rock's going to take you on. And it's like, okay, fine, we get that. At least you're explaining, what's going on. At least you're trying to give, an answer as to why you didn't, act this way on the Netflix premiere. But then comes, Elimination Chamber, or at least, before that, SmackDown and everything, where he's there in New Orleans, announcing New Orleans is going to get WrestleMania next year on the 11th and the 12th of April. And then he's there to offer Cody Rhodes a proposition, and that proposition, he wants Cody's soul. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. What does that mean? What does he mean by his soul? Basically, what it means is that Rock wants Cody to be his champion, to be someone that's willing to sell his soul to stay on top, be the guy and everything. Well, come Elimination Chamber, we find out Rock's going to be there too, because again, as I mentioned, he alluded to the fact that Ari Emanuel had asked him to be there due to ticket sales not being, I guess, substantial, even though 40,000 plus, 40K plus, I think substantial enough, and so does everybody else. So Rock ends up there, along with Travis Scott. We get the moment, that got everybody talking, the heel turn with Cena, when Rock does this, and it's like, okay, here we go. Here we go, right? And, well, let's just say the build for, the Cena-Cody match, the Cena-Rhodes match after that was all right, but it missed that big oomph piece, And apparently that big oomph piece was, The Rock. And The Rock basically said that after he did the thing in Elimination Chamber, he called John, he called Cody, and essentially said, look guys, I think my final boss work is done. I'm going to have the final boss step back into the shadows, excuse me. I'm going to have him step back into the shadows, and, and I'm going to leave the spotlight to you guys and everything, because I don't want to be involved in this. I want the focus basically to be on you. He's basically in his own words, he's saying, look, my final boss persona is no longer needed unless it needs to be. So I'm going to just step away and let you guys, take on everything that needs to be taken on to get this story to that next level. Well, we'll put it this way. Not a lot of people bought that. I mean, even Rock said that basically he was surprised when Travis Scott's music hit. He was surprised that Travis Scott's music hit because obviously he knew, this is what he said, and you can interpret what he said any which way you want. But he said basically that when he heard Travis Scott's music play, let me get some coffee here for a second. But he said when he heard Travis Scott's music play, even he was surprised because I guess in his own mind he knew that fans were kind of feeling or kind of believing that, okay, here comes Travis Scott, then The Rock's going to come next. That didn't happen. It was just Travis Scott. And apparently there were reports, probably false reports, that he was backstage at WrestleMania. He just chose not to come out. And he said that was his choosing. That he chose not to be part of that because, again, as I mentioned, he wanted the focus to be on Cody and John for the time being. But, again, everybody that I'm subscribed to and those that I'm not subscribed to, those that are, well-renowned IWC podcasters, critics, fans, and some that have been in the business and other kind of combat sports and sporting business as well, they didn't buy that excuse. Nobody did. Not even Jonathan Coachman bought that excuse. And he does coaching company. He used to work for WWE. He used to work with The Rock. So he knows from personal experience that what Rock was spewing on the Pat McAfee show yesterday was a bunch of BS. The same goes for Dave Lagana. Dave Lagana of Busted Open Radio. Even he didn't buy it. And apparently he went off more so than JD was. I mean, JD, social media-wise on Twitter, he went off, in several ways, giving his opinions. And he did kind of go off, sort of, yesterday in his Tuesday Night Titans collab with Solo Monster. But here's the thing. He was because even JD said it himself, he was a lot more calmer in his expressing how he felt on the show last night and on social media than Dave Lagana did. Dave LaGrecia did. Dave LaGrecia, not Lagana, but Dave LaGrecia did. Excuse me. And you know what? I don't blame him for, not being so excited and all that, because obviously if you don't see somebody for so long and everything, you don't see somebody for so long that's an integral part of this entire storyline, then obviously okay, if they're not showing up now, there's not a chance they're going to show up at Mania, so what do we do from there? So, JD was very reserved. I mean, yeah, he was pissed, don't get me wrong, he was pissed, so was Solomon, so was Chiz Alex. Chiz Alex did a video as well. I don't know what Greg Morgan or A&B Convos Wrestling Edition has to say about it, but I can tell you honestly, not a lot of people bought into what Rock said as an explanation on the Pat McAfee show yesterday as to why he wasn't there at WrestleMania, to be part of something that essentially he started. I mean, people are sharing images of the fact that, what he said in response to not being there and not wanting to be, in the spotlight, stepping back into the shadows as the final boss, and hey, the final boss work is done. Everybody basically went online and said, really, Rock? You don't want to be involved? You don't want to be part of this? Then explain this. Explain this moment, these images from Bad Blood. Explain this moment, this image from the SmackDown 2 weeks before Bad Blood when you're wanting Cody's soul. Explain this from after John Cena turned heel. It's like, explain how you don't want to be part of something when you've already been part of it. You played an integral part. That's how people were looking at it. They looked at it like Rock was making nothing more than a lame excuse. And you know what? I love The Rock. Everybody does. He's a good guy. But he has to realize that the business has changed a lot. It has changed a lot. And he's on social media himself. But he has to realize that the business has changed a lot to where even the casual fans, not just the hardcore, but the casual fans are smart enough to realize, yeah, what you're saying is a bunch of bull, and basically what it sounds like from what you're, telegraphing and everything, that basically all this came together at the last millisecond. That's how people are, looking at it. That basically everything we thought had been, pretty much started, back in October, and some of it was actually more so given the full gas, right around Elimination Chamber. Because the other thing he expressed is that he wanted Cody to go heel. He wanted Cody to be the one to turn his back on the fans and John Cena be the babyface. But Triple H said, no. You know what's a better idea? John going heel and Cody being the babyface. And Rock was cool with that. He said, cool, let's do that. But you have to run it by John first. And John, give him credit because he likes to get back to the fans, basically said, hey, I'm cool with that too. Fans have been wanting that. I'm going to give it to them. But yeah, not a lot of people are buying Rock's excuse and everything. And it's like, again, people have said, if you're going to be part of this, you need to commit. You need to basically take some time off from your projects, from your other commitments, from the places you're working for, and saying, look, I'm not going to be able to be here, so I'm going to, because of this, and this is why, I'm setting this time, aside, because I'm not going to be, be able to be here because of my involvement going into WrestleMania. But yeah, Rock didn't do himself any favors with his answer yesterday on Pat McAfee's show. But let me know what your thoughts are. Do you believe The Rock, or do you think he just